Shivi Jalotta, B2B influencer and content marketing strategist at Story. Shivi, welcome onto the webinar.
Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. We're joined also once again by Tom Armitage, digital sales playmaker at SiteSeeker. Hi, Tom.
What's going on? I feel special because I'm the only one that's from the United States here. So
Bring us from across the pond, representing. And last but by no means least, we have Martin Boyle, Director of Brand and Communications for Lead Forensics. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Joe.
We will be using the chat function throughout the webinar, so if anybody in our audience does have a question, feel free to pop it in there. If we have time, we will get to it, but I'm sure we are going to have a lot to discuss. So I think let's just jump straight into it, shall we? So what different types of influencer marketing are there? And do you have a favorite or a least favorite? And I think, James, we'll come to you first, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So I think I've seen obviously B2C usage of influencer marketing is massive, and there's obviously mostly a push towards using that as for B2C e-commerce brands. That's usually the big push, right? And there's also kind of like a newer push towards user-generated content by people who aren't particularly classed as influencers, and that's a massive part of the TikTok meta at the moment as well. But I think there's something to be said around, just because it's B2B doesn't mean there's not a human behind the desk of that B2B organization. And I think that's probably a key part of that, but different types definitely revolve around the different influencers. So I always look on an influencer to influencer basis, and it's hard to classify them because creators come in so many different shapes and sizes that it's actually, going by a creator basis is how we tend to do things, especially when we're looking at what's the best mix of things. But you can classify some in sizes, so we're looking at micro, nano, medium, big, whatever you want to call them. But I think it's interesting to look at them from an individual perspective, and that's definitely what we do when it comes to looking at the influencer spread and how they'd work in a B2B space as well, because that is a massively exploding scene, especially on TikTok.
I did wonder how quickly you would mention TikTok, James, because I know it's very much your
instantly.
Sort of Fantastic. Tom, we'll come to you. Different types of influencer marketing, favorite and least favorite.
Yeah, if you're talking actual specific types or formats, you have the ones that are much more native, right? Where you get the influencer that's doing their normal, organic, natural type of content, and then they'll give a shout out or a plug to a paid sponsor. You have the ones where it's actually completely owned by that brand, and that post, that individual article, that individual video or image is actually on behalf of that brand, supplied by that brand. That one is a little more forthcoming and less natural, less native. And then you have the co-marketing opportunities. And I even see something just like this, right? I've been putting a lot of work into my LinkedIn activities over the past couple of years. Lead Forensics is a partner of ours, but me being on this webinar, I like this one the best, right? Because this is a two-way street. I like to view it as I'm helping Lead Forensics just as much as Lead Forensics is helping SiteSeeker and my personal brand. And that's my favorite type of influencer marketing. And that's where in the B2B space, I think there's the single most value and the biggest area of opportunity.
And do you have a least favorite then, Tom? If LinkedIn, this sort of thing is your favorite?
Yeah, I think the natural native type of plugs, I don't know how much a lot of the brands are paying for that, but I think it just goes one ear and out the other ear in a lot of cases. And I don't think there's as much long-term value to that type of activity. So yeah, that's where I stand.
Thanks very much, Tom. Shivi, let's come over to you. Different types of influencer marketing, your favorite and your least favorite, please.
Okay, so I think according to me, there are no types of influencer marketing. There are different types of influencers that you could collaborate with, depending on what your brand wants and what your vision is and what your objectives are. Now, these influencers go from, say, an industry expert in analysis to a niche specific creator who's talking about a certain topic, or maybe a generalized creator who's talking about everything and anything to stay relevant on different platforms, for example. Now, you can also add on even your personal employees who are working with you and have built their personal persona on different platforms. You can utilize those. Now, when I talk about the least and the least favorite, I think I'd go with the B2C. That's very, very generic. That's going on Instagram. There's so much cringe content. There's a saturation out there, honestly. And when I talk about the B2B influencer marketing, I would definitely love working in that sector, because I am also working with a lot of creators. There's so much opportunity there. There's so much creativity, and it's not on the face marketing, right? It's very, very subtle. You've got to be very subtle with the marketing tactics out there. So yeah.
I did love him bringing up cringe content. That was very funny. Thank you very much, Shivi. Martin, round us out then. Different types of marketing, favorite and least favorite.
Yeah, we have such a good panel. A lot of ground's been covered. So things haven't been covered. I suppose you could even potentially lump in affiliate marketing along with influencer marketing. In terms of like favorites and least favorites, so favorite creators, I obviously have to shout out Thomas there. But our audiences that we sell to are predominantly sales and marketing. The stuff that works for me is stuff that's engaging, whether it's funny or emotional in nature. So a couple of shout outs for sales audience. Tom Boston does really good stuff at Sales Loft. Will Aitken at Sales Feed. For a marketing audience, there's a guy called Rob Mayhew. He does more of like a London agency type thing, which are these really amazingly well observed, funny videos. But what I would say is, if you're watching this webinar now and you're working in the marketing function of a sheet metal manufacturer, like that still could be you, because it's about identifying those pain points for your customers and creating the content around those. Because the stuff that I love is the funny stuff, right? And in comedy, there's basically two things that will make you laugh across all comedy, and that is surprise or recognition. And when it's done well, there's not a lot that's funnier than recognizing someone else suffering the same pain as you. My favorite. And least favorite, just anything that's boring or disingenuous, non-authentic, really. I'm not going to name names, or it's just stuff that you go, oh, boring, move on.
Well, I'm pleased you're not naming names, but yeah, absolutely. I think everybody must be following Will Aitken at this point, right? He is really doing smashing stuff on this. Really but also, I do have to shout Chris Van Prague, who has also appeared on webinars and podcasts with us. He's fantastic as well. You need to check out his recent stuff as well. Yeah, I won't give away too much about what it is, but Martin, you'd very much enjoy that one, I think. So if B2B organizations aren't already, why should people be looking into influencer marketing? Shivi, let's come back to you on that one.
Okay, I have 3 points to add on to this one. One is that it's really cost effective right now. Okay, so I've been working with a lot of Indian influencers as of now, and if I compare the cost that they charge for a post on Instagram, is literally they charge about 2,000, 3,000 pounds. And if you want to have a post or a kind of marketing budget that you've set for LinkedIn, and if you want to collaborate with that kind of influencers that are based on LinkedIn, the cost is literally 1/4 of what they're charging. So that is one of the reasons I think that you should be definitely investing. And honestly, now's the time, because after 2-3 years, this becomes massive and they're going to charge literally the same amount that an influencer on Instagram is charging. Second, I think everybody's done seeing boring ads that you run on YouTube and your Google pages. So I think you have a lot of opportunity to create creative content. Honestly, there are so many type of contents, whether it's webinar, whether it's doing a personal story with them, whether it's kind of carousel that you want to work with, or even for a matter of fact, nowadays that LinkedIn has started promoting, the algorithm has started promoting videos. It's very easy to kind of put in your take on something and just post a video with a little bit of information on what the product is or what is your take on it. So these two things are massively kind of it's going to help your business to grow. And yeah, I mean, these two are the major points that you should be definitely investing in influencer marketing.
Well, happily, your point there, Shivi, of utilizing your video capabilities, that leads me very, very nicely to both James and to Tom. So James, I'll come down to you first. Why should people be looking into, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Why should people be looking into influencer marketing?
I mean, it's infinite answers, and Shivi's completely right. I mean, it's an untapped, underpriced market. I hate to sound like Gary Vee for a minute there, but it's very much all's for the taking, especially in the B2B space. There's not many. B2B has a horrendous attitude, not intentionally, of being trapped in a bubble of their own professionalism. Like, just because it got to B2B, suddenly all fun, humanity just stops, and it's all again running those boring YouTube ads that we mentioned. And I think that's to do with a couple of things. One, obviously, it's just the culture of B2B organizations that it needs to evolve over time, and it's evolved at a lesser rate because they've been forced to evolve not as fast as B2Cs had to adapt to consumer needs. But there's also a lot of things we need to kick inside organizations like ours. So the culture of campaigns is one of them, and I say this to a lot of my clients is, you get stuck in going, right, okay, we've got this objective to hit, and we whack a bunch of money resource behind that for 3 months, poof, it's gone. Now, no one cares about that because it's gone, no one remembers it. There's something we need to change about providing ongoing value through these partnerships with influencers, because again, that's going to be the easiest way for B2B organizations to plug in and get video content, because most of us aren't in a video content surplus unless they own media like Lead Forensics do, like Thomas does, like I'm sure Shivi does as well. So they're always in a content negative, which means they need to get ahead of that. And you might as well leverage the trust that others have already built, because that's the main thing, is piggybacking off the trust and authenticity built off these influencers that will help B2B organizations catch up, because they do have catching up to do. And it's building those long-term relationships. Again, you don't want this to be a campaign or a culture thing that starts, disappears in 3 months, now it's gone, boohoo, no one cares anymore. This is, right, how do I find 5 to 10 influencers that I believe in their channel and I want their channels to succeed, and push them forward? Because we all have heard of the brands that constantly sponsor all YouTube videos, Squarespace, NordVPN, also they appear every single video. And that goes from a space of, oh, well done, they're getting a payday, what a sellout, to Squarespace keeping propping up my favorite creator. I love that. And there's so many things that can apply to. That brand resonance can pair back around to those organizations that need to catch up. So this is probably one of the biggest things that B2B organizations need to jump on like yesterday, because it's easy money. And again, it's no one's doing it as much as they should be. So that just means infinite potential. And depending on the platform you choose, like a TikTok, it could be the opportunity of YouTube 10 years ago. TikTok is now, sorry to sound like Gary Vee again, but yeah, that's what we're looking at. So yeah, super exciting stuff. As you can tell, I get a bit animated about it, but it's just opportunities galore.
And actually, we to sort of shine light backstage, James, we were speaking recently about can you tell us about that construction company you mentioned? Do you remember the content that they were putting out that you told me about?
So if anyone in the webinar now and amongst the panel, go search up a YouTube channel called Asheville or Asheville Construction. They are a waste management, aggregates and construction company based in the UK. And when you initially envision that content, you think, oh, well, moving stuff from one place to another and building a house or two, right? But they have turned the whole thing, they've mic'd up the MD, and he's turned it into a full-blown YouTuber vlog influencer experience. Over 300,000 or 400,000 followers on YouTube / subscribers, which is massive, first of all, because that's another revenue stream for him. So that's another reason why B2B brands need to take seriously. But he's managed to take waste management and bring in trains in and like building houses, which is nice actually to watch, but he's turned that into an absolutely outstanding experience. And now he's building new YouTube rooms for the likes of KSI, and he's collaborating with influencers on a B2C high level that waterfalls down to him. And it's a fascinating example of how one person did something extremely different that's just revolutionized how we could look at how you document construction, just because he decided to do something that creators do. And again, that's why this is the ethos of our business, post like a creator.
Absolutely. And I think there's something really compelling about watching people at work, like, particularly in an industry that you don't necessarily know anything about. There's something really oddly compelling about that sort of thing. So, Tom, why should people be looking into influencer marketing, and what's the best way to identify the need for influencer marketing then?
I think the need is always there. There's always audience members out there. You just need to find them, right? And traditionally that's been done through more traditional digital tactics like SEO, like blogging and content, like pay-per-click management. And I think it's just a roundabout different way of going about finding those people. So the value is there. There's no other way of looking at it because the influencer are helping you find your audience just as you would need to do through other tactics and you have done through other tactics, right? I think it comes back to a couple of points. The first is a very well-known stat in social media marketing. That's the 99-1 rule, right? You have 1% of people that are creators, 9% that are engaging, and then that feeds to the 90% of people that are simply consumers and viewing, right? So it's just a logical stat to look at because it's like, if I need to get in front of these 90 people or 99 people, I better go to the 1% that's creating to have the trickle down effect to the folks that are the viewers and those that are consuming. So the model itself is set up to be very successful if you can find the 1% that are creating and helping you find your actual relevant target audience among the 90 or the 99 if you include the engagers as well. And the other kind of cliche reference I'll make is the very old and we hate this term now, content is king, right? But what I'm going to put a spin on it is personal content is now king. We've long gone are the days where companies could be successful with creating their own content on their own behalf because the algorithms has made it so you can't, in most cases, be successful on your own without having help from other creators, right? And COVID did a lot of damage to this. Maybe the algorithms updated just coincidentally at the same time, but within the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen a massive explosion among personal creators and creators getting a lot more comfortable in their own skin to step beyond just professional content where they're sharing their own personal stories and getting a lot more ambitious with what they're saying on social media. And that's helped them to pick up more followers, more authentic engagement. And that's made it a lot more lucrative and enticing for brands to tap into these people so that way they can get in front of, again, their audiences. So personal content is king, and the 99-1 rule are the 2 points that I'll make for that answer.
Well, I mean, you know, they're cliche for a reason, Tom. So, you know, clearly if it works, then, you know, like I say,
Good point.
cliche for a reason. Martin, anything to add on that before we move to our next question? What should people be looking into?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's pretty much covered everything. You know, obviously helps you reach a wider audience. More cost effective currently, can even be free. So, you know, there's lots of things you can experiment with for nothing. Just to dip your toe in the water if you're not entirely sold. So, I think that's a good place to start. Obviously, what you're doing as well when you're working with an influencer is you're tapping into their credibility as well. So you're kind of borrowing some credibility from them. And the thing is, everyone always talks about B2B, logical, rational decision making, but actually this is kind of bringing the emotion into it. So I think that's really the edge for this.
Yeah, and I do hope that our you know, people who've joined us for other essential B2B webinars, I do hope you got your bingo cards, because we always seem to keep coming back to, you know, that people buy from people and bringing emotion to it and putting people first. So, okay, so Martin, you've helped us out a little bit there. You've touched on getting started and free and resources and things. So, Shivi, I want to get your thoughts on where do you start? What resources are out there to help or support your influencer strategy?
We'll go back to the basics, I think. First of all, whatsoever your campaign is and whatsoever your product is, you've got to make sure that you have your objectives in mind. Then you've got to make sure that you have a list of influencers in mind, whether you want to go with the experts or do you want to go with somebody who's specifically talking about a specific topic that's related to your industry. Second, you'd also have to keep in mind the kind of audiences they're catering to, right? If you want to speak with somebody and want to collaborate with somebody whose audience is not the ones that you're looking at, there's no point of collaboration there, right? It's just going to be, it's going to reach a lot of people, but it's not going to give you results. So you've got to keep that in mind. Also keep in mind, you know, the KPIs that you want to keep in mind, say the brand awareness that you want, the engagement that you're going to get, the negotiations, how's that going to happen. So I think you should, when you want to start the influencer campaign, you should just stick to the basics as of now. Speak with them when you're reaching out to them. Just make sure that you personalize your email. Just don't send a template based email and just say that, hey, you're doing really great, we'd like to collaborate with you. Just don't do that. It should be more about them. You just do a little bit of research and send out an email. That would be really good. So that, and second, I think there's also one point to add on, their thought process and your thought process should be matching. Because if they do not believe in the vision and the product, the kind of marketing that's going to go out, it's going to look very, very fake. So you don't want to do that, because any which way is your and the influencers, the image is on the line. So you don't want to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely, fantastic point you make there. So making sure that the goals are aligned, but also why you're making this particular piece of content and using this particular B2B influencer. Yeah, that's fantastic, Shivi. Thanks very much. James, where'd you start? What resources are out there to help with influencer strategy?
It's an interesting one because a lot of the tools that are set out there are very focused towards B2C marketing and research. So there's plenty of companies that put together these dashboards, and that you can go in and you pay a certain amount a month for them to either find influencers for you, or even ones where they have influencers listed and they have a shopping basket there. One story costs this, one post costs this. But again, like Shivi mentioned earlier, those are flash in the pans that very much are fast moving e-com stuff that won't really serve our purposes, because we all know B2B lead times are longer. We all know that trust takes longer to build. So I'm always going to be an advocate for asking your audience first. Can you survey via email marketing? Can you put out social posts and use native tools to go, out of these three influencers, who do you like best, as a poll on LinkedIn or Instagram? Like, see who would actually wants to see it. Because if you can leverage your audience first, and you go, if someone's voted for a collab with Gary Vee, and then suddenly Gary Vee turns up on your feed, they're like, oh my god, they listen to me. So there's an element of audience interaction there if your audience is already active, and this goes back to the importance of social within B2B. But then also just find out who is the most relevant and helpful creators for your niche. So let's say if you're trying to service a B2B marketing company, you're going to have to look through and find all the people that are making the top changes to Facebook ads, like to star videos, right, who are already providing that information. There's a ton of people, and then you support those who are supporting them. So it's like you're piggybacking off of that. And YouTube is my favorite platform for that. I think it's the best for trust building and long-term relationship, because then you find someone that aligns with your vision, like Shivi said, and it's better. Like influencer partnerships and influencer marketing has been going through so much longer with YouTube. It feels better from a commercial consumption point of view. So yeah, and I think just finding them yourself with searching and researching and diving in is going to be the best way. There's no one size fits all solution, I'm afraid. But hey, business idea for anyone who wants to focus in B2B influencer dashboards and services. But absolutely, I think native tools, and ask your audience first, because let them tell you what they want. But having an active audience is step one, because if you're not getting any comments rolling in, that's going to be your first problem.
And do you think that YouTube is your preferred option there because people have an expectation of what they're getting on YouTube? They're willing to spend longer with that influencer. Would that contribute to that?
Yeah, if you're dedicated to watching a full 10-minute video from a creator, which think of like attention spans now, especially with the TikTokification of the social sphere, you're looking at attention span of hooks. Everyone's going, how to get your hook in 3 to 5 seconds.
Oh no.
Oh, we seem to have lost James. He was in full flow.
He was making such a good point too.
I know, he was really on a roll with this one, wasn't he? Hopefully we'll be able to get James back and he can join us.
So everywhere else is very
I'm so sorry, James. You're
fast moving compared to you. Am I back?
We're not entirely
I was on a good
sure.
roll there. Classic. Eh? I don't know where I got to. But anyway, go back to that point, because I'm probably taking way too much time up. It's a case of, right, what platform works best for trust? There are obviously other ones. Obviously, you automatically think of LinkedIn when it comes to trust. Am I frozen again?
You're not, but there seems to be quite the delay at the minute, Jay. So what we'll do is we'll move on to Tom, and then we'll come back to you for the next question, by which point, hopefully, the gremlins in the internet have sorted themselves out. So if that's okay.
First of
Tom.
all, I'm finding it funny that Martin's last each time. We're taking a lot of the good points, and he needs to think really creatively by the time it gets to him. So I just pointing that out. So yeah, a lot of the tools, as James said, are on the B2C side. You got like Scrunch and Upfluence and things like that, but you're not going to really see a ton of value from those on the B2B side, because it's a lot more of niche creators that you're going to need to tap into, and they're not going to necessarily be indexed in those type of databases and have that type of information there. And a lot of times they might not even be what they would consider a creator or an influencer. They're probably not even going to be considering themselves that. So they're just doing it because it's a part of their job or a part of their interest. And those sometimes can be the best relationships, because that's going to be the most authentic, and they're going to be creating regularly, trying to cater to their audience in a way that's most appealing and most natural to them and what their audience wants to hear. So you can't really discount people that are not really already monetizing their personal brand. They might be still really good fits for your company. So tools aside, best place to start, you have to become a part of the community first and foremost before you even start doing your outreach. If I just saw a post the other day on LinkedIn of a girl who got approached by a company to do some sort of joint collaborative influencer effort, and there was a big checklist that she went through to make sure that this company was valid, right? Because there's lots of spammers out there. You don't know if they're just promising you empty promises. So she went to their LinkedIn page, saw how many employees there were, looked up this individual that contacted her, looked at the website, just verifying that they were credible, that this person was credible, that this was a legitimate influencer marketing program, which is what I would do the same exact thing too. So you need to make sure that before you start doing your outreach, that you actually have a presence there, that you understand the community, that you're actively creating content inside of that channel. So that way you already are building your own audience at the same time of leveraging the creators' audiences, or ahead of leveraging the creators' audiences. And there's more credibility there that the creators themselves can actually make sure that you're legit and that you know what you're doing, and they're more likely to back you and participate in your program if they actually know that you're active, you're there, you know what you're doing, you know what you are talking about, and you know that the community has belief in you as a brand and as a business. So I would say before you even begin your influencer program, make sure that you're diving headfirst into whatever that platform of choice is, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever it is, for probably at least 6 to 12 months minimally. So that way you can build a foundation, a fan base, and you can make sure that your employees and your staff and whatnot are actively engaging there before you start doing your outreach.
And that recognition will absolutely help you if you're established slightly in that community to then go on. Yeah, fantastic, Tom. Thank you for swooping in when the gremlins have taken over James's internet. Thanks very much. Martin, we'll come down to you on that one. Would you like to repeat the question?
Yeah.
Has it been so long?
No, it's all good. So what resources are out there to help and support, right? So obviously webinars like this one, great insights from everyone. Like Thomas said, I'm going to need to think creatively to come up with some extra stuff here. What I would say is, so I've worked in both B2B and B2C, and the obvious differences between B2B and B2C, there are quite a few fairly obvious ones, but the one that really will probably resonate with everyone here is B2C influencers. You can get hold of them. B2B influencers are very busy people doing their jobs quite often. So what I would say is, don't be annoying, but be persistent, because they might have just missed the memo. They're trying to. A lot of these people are just trying to get through the list of things to do on that day. And the other thing I would say is, if you have an absolutely killer creative idea, it could well be worth dropping the big bucks on a well-known influencer. But you have to be prepared to take the risk, and you have to have a killer creative idea. So yeah, that would be my answer on that one.
Thanks very much, Martin. Yeah. So just very quickly, we're going to throw a poll question up onto the screen for our audience there. If you'd like to have a free, no obligation demo of Lead Forensics, which obviously I think the poll's this bit. Hey, there we go. please feel free to select the answer on the screen right now to get your free trial of Lead Forensics. And like I say, it's no obligation trial of Lead Forensics. And I'll just give you a few more seconds just to select your answers. And then we'll get back with the last couple of questions I've got for our panel today. I was going to say this afternoon, but then I realized that, Tom, it's not the afternoon where you are. So
It just became afternoon.
Hey, we did it.
Well.
Shivi, I want to go back to something you mentioned briefly. We touched on it. You mentioned KPIs. So what KPIs should you have in place to monitor influencer engagement?
Okay, so honestly, if I'm a brand, depending on brand to brand and the campaigns they want to run, different KPIs would be in mind. You know, somebody would, talk about brand awareness, somebody's looking for followers, somebody's looking for engagement. That can vary. But according to me, if I'm, executing a campaign, first thing that I want to keep in mind is that the kind of content that I want to post with the influencer, it should be more engaging and more conversational, so that it kind of sparks some emotion, so that people can come down and kind of just tap in, click on something and just comment on asking certain questions, or maybe just answering certain polls that I've asked. So what happens here is that I know the brand is going to get awareness. Of course, they're getting awareness because the person is coming down and they're asking certain questions. What else happens here is that if you tap into that emotion, they would kind of go back to clicking on your website and understanding what the product is. So to add on to this, I think there's also one more thing, because if an influencer is kind of posting certain things, they have a very loyal audience. They would engage with certain things that they are posting, right? So of course, and the other thing is that what impact it's having on its audience. So these are two major things that these are the two major KPIs that I would keep in mind while I'm executing a certain campaign with the influencers.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I suppose it can be quite difficult in terms of like a B2B space, trying to think of a way of tapping into emotion. It can be tricky, but it's also not impossible. So thanks very much, Shivi. James, let's hope that the internet gods are kind to us. We come to you for this question. What KPIs should you have in place to monitor influencer engagement?
It's interesting because usually it would differ campaign to campaign, right? You want to track the things that you're after goal-wise. I think whenever I think of influencers, especially your first go round, it's one, testing the reach and increase of your brand and web click-throughs, the classic stuff. But also, I'm mainly focused on the qualitative data when it comes to it. I'm not really focused on the numbers. I'm focused on how's it increasing your comments? How's it increasing your brand perception? That's the big thing for me. Is that trust we're trying to leverage actually having an impact? And sometimes it's not going to work. Maybe the first video, maybe the second or third or fourth video in the campaign starts to drive that traffic, starts to add usual ongoing interest in what you're doing. I think that's probably the most important thing for me. How are humans reacting to your brand, and how are you recording that as something that you can track for brand reputation? So I think it's always going to go back to brand building, especially from my perspective. So, but there's plenty of things you can track. All the classic KPIs of reach, impressions, comments, saves and shares are probably the two. Save, shares and comments are the truest forms of engagement for me, practical, because we work in organic social every single day, because those are the things people have to go out of their way the most to do. So those for me show the most success, because you've made something someone can actually give monkeys about and go, oh, I had to comment on that. I want it so good it's come back for later, or it's so good I'm sending it somewhere else to show everyone else. So those are the ones I track the most.
Tom's, it similar story for you, or you got different ideas what KPIs to track?
Yeah. I was going to take it in a little bit of a different direction. So one of the biggest things between B2C and B2B is, I think, the metrics and the KPIs, because with B2C, you generally have they're generally okay with soft metrics, whether that's impressions, reach, or engagement metrics. And you might have B2C that's looking at that brand visibility, that brand awareness, and they're okay with it, because that's in B2C. That brand awareness is very important, especially over the long run, because there's going to be greater recall for that brand recognition, right? I've never met a client whose goal in B2B wasn't one thing: sales. That's all they want. That's all they've ever been obsessed with. And you can have a really great discussion and argument over the importance of visibility and brand awareness. And then the conversation ends and they still say, how many sales did you generate? Right. So because of that, those soft metrics that Shivy and James talked about are important, but you still need to tie it back to actually real results at the end of the day, the hard metrics. So with that being said, as long as you approach it with the right strategy, you make sure that the client is on board with this being a long-term program, because you're not going to have overnight success. You still need to tie it back to form fills and phone calls if those are your primary conversion points, which in B2B that still is, right? Live chats can be there as well. But if you have form fills as your primary goal for conversion points, you want to make sure that how did you hear about us is in one of the drop downs for those forms, and make sure that you have the options there that can tie it back to the influencer program or the social media program or the campaigns that you're running, to make sure that that's there, or an open field, so that way they can type in who or how they heard about you and why they're actually requesting information or requesting a demo. And if you have phone calls as a primary conversion point, you got to make sure you have a call tracking solution in place like CallRail, so that way you can tie it back to the source and the source medium. And if you're using the right parameters and the right UTM tracking and the right referral links and things like that, you can tie it back to the campaign as well. So soft metrics, very good to track, make sure it's there, but you got to tie it back to hard metrics in the B2B space. So that's what I'll add.
Well, we always promise value with the Essential B2B webinars, and I think as a team, guys, you've really done very well with that answer, just like across. So we've got soft metrics, we've got hard metrics. Fantastic. Martin, any other KPIs that you should have in place to monitor influencer engagement?
No, I think you've just absolutely nailed that answer, guys. Nothing more to add on that one.
Fantastic. We've had a perfect answer. It's fantastic. Guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. I was really looking forward to getting into this one. It was a really good chat. So if I could come around to each of you now and ask for one key takeaway, and it can be a do or a don't, or a blend of the two perhaps, when it comes to influencer marketing. Can you please give me just one key thing? Shivy, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I think you've got to be open to ideas of collaborating with different influencers, and it's not going to happen overnight. You have to give your time and energy. And if you come to an influencer and tell them that, hey, I'm looking for such and such sales or such and such downloads, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to give that certain amount of time, say 2 to 3 months, 4 months, to show that the campaign is up and running. One campaign will not change anything. So you have to have patience and give it time. That is my one big give right now.
Thank you so much, Shivy. It ties in nicely to what Tom was saying about, seeding it, but also, so you got to seed it for enough time, plant the campaign, and then give it enough time to see those results coming in. So thank you very much, Shivy. That was a fantastic answer. James, we'll come down to you next.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to kind of wrap things up. I think there's a experiment with lots of different content types and content platforms. So when you're looking at, can you take advantage of TikTok? Can you look at long form content in video podcasting to create a relationship with not only the influencer's face, but your own? Like, can you come on more of a level pegging with an influencer? So it feels like more of a collaboration than, hey, I pay you to do X. I think this is where optimizing your own social presence comes back into it, really focusing on your own organic and just making sure that you are a master of edutainment, like when it comes to working with influencers, right? How can you put value out in a way that's not going to make people click away in 3 to 5 seconds? It's going to be, pushing the influencer to be creative, but do it in a quick way, because the war for attention online is ruthless. You have an average of 2 seconds to stop someone scrolling thumb. So, depending on how they create, you have to figure out a way to, if it is long form, get them with that hook headline in the beginning, that journalistic element, and put your creative and journalistic hat on to think. You don't want to, cut the legs out from under your influencer, but how do you give them all the tools to succeed and put that value in to what is their unique style? And having a really creative focused hat on, and make sure your marketing teams have that resource there to go at it hard and work with them on a really, really interesting level.
Absolutely, and as you say, keeping people's faces in your content as well. It just, that's where you see it really, really blowing up. So James, thank you very, very much for your point there. Tom, we'll come up to you then. One key takeaway.
My initial response was the same as Shivy's, because I think that is probably the most important. This is a long-term play. This is not like Google pay-per-click ads where you can start seeing results tomorrow. It needs to be looked at in the same vein as organic social. You have to give it time, or it will absolutely backfire in your face, and you're going to have a hard time, swallowing the pill of that investment if you don't give it time to grow and breathe. But since you took that, I have another one, and that is to make sure you give it enough budget, because this is not a easy or free tactic or initiative. And that budget can come in terms of paying those influencers. It can come in terms of free swag or free promotional items or free software, whatever it is that you might be bartering, or it could come in terms of time, effort, and labor. This takes a lot of time to manage if you're going to do it right. So keep in mind the budget as it relates to the resources that need to be applied to this program in order for it to be successful. Or it could lastly come in terms of salary. I saw a LinkedIn post the other day that said within the next 3 to 5 years, B2B companies will actually be hiring their top influencer and bringing that in-house, because this is going to become that valuable where it's not going to be, it's you have to reach whatever is most cost effective with this strategy, right? When does it reach that threshold where it just makes more sense to hire them and pay them a full-time salary and have them be creating an endless amount of content during a 40-hour work week? And once that scale tips, then things are really going to get shaken up. So make sure that you give enough budget in terms of costs, fees going out to the influencers, resources or swag, labor, and fees, or even salary. That's my point.
Absolutely, take it seriously is what you're saying, Tom. Martin, one final takeaway from you, please.
Yeah, probably just building on Thomas's point there. In B2B, if you're after leads and sales, one thing that you can offer to influencers that is of value to them, of course, is a commission. So there's that lever as well that you can pull. My main key takeaway, though, I would say is basically, if you haven't already start doing this, then take a plunge, try some different options and see what works.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for a really, really good discussion. I think you've each contributed really, really valuable stuff to our audience and a lot of things to take away. So thank you very much to our panel. Thank you very much to everybody who's watching this, and we'll see you again for the next B2B webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yes.